Hello, good morning. Welcome to a special Christmas edition of the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, farewell to a legend. Martin Peters, one of England's World Cup winners, passes away at the age of 76. On top of the world, Liverpool, they're crowned Club World Cup winners. They beat Flamengo 1-0 in Doha last night. And Carlo Ancelotti and Mikel Arteta, they'll wonder what they've let themselves in for after Everton and Arsenal. Their new clubs grind out a 0-0 draw at Goodison Park. Rolling back the years with us this morning, Paul McCarthy was sports editor at the News of the World. He's now running his own successful sports PR firm. Paddy Barclay worked for pretty much everyone during his long and distinguished career. And John Richardson makes a welcome return as well. He's the Sports Journalists Association's reigning sports news reporter of the year.
My turn.
Well, welcome back, Rico.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Nothing like a fix. Well deserved. OK, don't forget you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup, or for these old timers, you can write to the guests. Care of Sky, that's the way they like it. They'll write back to you, I promise. OK.
Rewritten.
Will you? Yeah, rewritten. Let's have a look at the papers then. The Sunday Times, as most papers this morning, reflect on the sad passing this morning of Martin Peters. Sad day for football front of the Sunday Times. Martin was one of the all-time greats. That's Sir Geoff Hurst's tribute to the former West Ham, Tottenham and England midfielder this morning. Sunday Telegraph, goodbye to England's gentleman, scored in the World Cup final in 1966. Elsewhere, in Doha, the world leader, Firmino, scored the winner yesterday for Liverpool against Flamengo in that Club World Cup final. Bare-chested salute and the celebrations are still continuing. But can they go on to win the Premier League? That's what they want to. They've got the Super Cup, they've got the European Cup, but they want the big one. It's the Premier League, of course. Taking the mick. Simon Mullock's story on the back page of the Sunday Mirror this morning says Mikel Arteta wanted assurances, guarantees that he would be Pep Guardiola's successor at Manchester City. He wasn't offered them, and that's why he agreed to become the new Arsenal manager. Back of the Mail on Sunday, tributes from Oliver Holt, Patrick Collins, Sir Geoff Hurst, Jeff Powell, Harry Redknapp and Sir Trevor Brooking this morning to Martin Peters, and Ian Herbert's report from Doha, Liverpool, of course, on top of the world. What about the action here yesterday? Manchester City, are they back in the title race? The Star seems to think so. They beat Leicester 3-1 yesterday. And a Christmas miracle, it certainly was. I was here for it, I was there, at St James's Park to watch Miguel Almiron score for the first time in a Newcastle shirt. It's taken him 324 days. It's his 27th attempt, but he's finally off the mark. They beat Crystal Palace yesterday. They will no doubt be running off the T-shirts on Tyneside. I was there. OK, Paul, let's first pay a fitting, fond and fitting farewell to Martin Peters. News broke, of course, yesterday that he had passed away at the age of 76. Of course, played in England's World Cup winning team in 1966 against West Germany, described by Sir Alf Ramsey as being 10 years ahead of his time, and so many tributes. And of course, we should pay tribute to a great player and a great man ourselves.
Yeah, I didn't know Martin. I met him several times. He was an ambassador at Upton Park in one of the lounges there, and he was always fascinating company. He was not the most outgoing guy. I think he kept himself to himself. But strange, I mean, he was obviously a West Ham hero, England 66 hero. I remember him more, funnily enough, playing for Spurs, because he joined Spurs in 1970. I think he was the first £200,000 transfer.
That's right. Yeah.
And huge money at those times. And I remember him just for his elegance. You know, I'm not a Spurs fan by any stretch of the imagination, as you know, but he just looked the part. He was in that immaculate white shirt. He never put a foot out of place, never had a hair out of place on his head. And he was a prodigious talent in terms of timing, late runs into the box, a great header of the ball as well, just elegant, deft touches, just brought the best out of other players. And, you know, he was literally seconds away from being England's World Cup hero. You know, if it hadn't been for that very late West Germany equaliser, we'd be talking about Martin Peters winning the World Cup and not Sir Geoff.
That's right.
Yeah. Memories of a fine man.
Yeah, he was, and it's quite interesting, Macca, mentioning the famous phrase of Sir Alf Ramsey, you know, 10 years ahead of his time. Well, football being football, I'm sure Martin Peters got, you know, quite a lot of Mickey taken about that phrase. But in actual fact, you can see now what Sir Alf meant by that, because we use phrases all the time now, like pockets of space and playing between the lines and so on, and that's exactly what he did. So maybe Alf should have said 50 years ahead of his time, because, you know, the players like Martin Peters are much more commonplace now than they were then. He was an incredibly subtle player. I don't remember red or yellow card. Well, they probably didn't have cards then, but I don't remember any trouble.
Yeah.
I don't remember him ever giving a manager a problem. I don't remember any controversy. All I remember is this, and Maka used the word elegant football, very elegant footballer, but underplayed. You know, he had an underplayed elegance. But I mean, his statistics are, you know, one of only 2 Englishmen to score in a World Cup final. You know, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know him either, but I never heard a word against him, you know, and he was just very, very popular and respected figure. And if I may say so, sort of like a typical East London, Essex, you know, Billy Bonds, you know, whatever they were like on the field, very gentleman.
Yeah, they were.
Off it.
Yeah.
He was very much the understated member of that West Ham triumvirate, wasn't he? Jeff Hurst, Bobby Moore.
Yeah.
As Macca said, you know, he could have been a hero. I remember watching it on a black and white little telly, you know, and Martin Peters, with England fans, obviously thought we'd won the World Cup, and then I was in tears when Germany equalised right at the end, and then going to added time. I know you wouldn't be, and you know, and then there's Jeff Hurst is the hero, but he would now, I would think, in the modern age, be grabbing the headlines that somebody like Kevin De Bruyne is grabbing now, because he's the same sort of player. You know, he is
that's not a bad shout,
ahead of his time. Kevin De Bruyne, you know, he lives in those pockets of space that Paddy mentioned. And also, sadly, it brings into focus the problems of dementia and Alzheimer's, which is hitting a lot of players, well, a lot of the England players. I mean, there's a few more that are not very well, you know, and sadly, you know, we've got to look at that. People are sort of investigating it. Does it go with heading a ball, etc., etc.? And can it be classified as an industrial disease? Because if it is, then members of the old footballers, they can then get their treatments for free. You know, they can have money to look after dementia patients, etc., etc. So I think that should be highlighted as well, because as we know, Martin wasn't very well in the last 2 or 3 years, but a lovely man, elegant man, sad loss.
Yeah, certainly is. How will we look back on this great England team, guys? Because, of course, as the years roll on, of course, we have a new generation who perhaps don't have the same understanding of the significance of the achievement at the time.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a worry. I saw there was a poll of 10 greatest players, and Pele didn't merit a mention. Yeah. And I'm going, Pele's what? Well, because people are saying we didn't see enough of Pele to be able to judge him. And that's my fear about the 66 team. People are not going to be able to go onto YouTube, other than the final. You're not going to be able to go onto YouTube and find lots and lots of clips as individual players. I mean, as a team, yes, obviously, but as individual players, you know. You mentioned Martin Peters to perhaps a much younger generation than we are around the table, and they'll be saying, yeah, well, he scored in a World Cup final, and perhaps that's all people will know of him. And you'll talk about somebody like Nobby Stiles. Now, Nobby Stiles was absolutely the linchpin of that England team in protecting everything and allowing Bobby Charlton to go forward, protecting the space when Alan Ball broke forward. And
people talk about holding midfield players as if they've just been invented. Nobby Stiles was one of the best I ever saw.
Exactly. So as individuals, I think there is a danger that what they meant as players, not just as members of a team, will get overlooked, and I think it's incumbent upon everybody to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And when somebody like Martin Peters passes away, I think it's great. Some of the tributes today, especially in the Mail on Sunday, they've really, pushed the boat out in terms of being able to get a huge range of people talking about it. To get Pat Collins talking about him, Ollie Hull, Jeff Powell, people who actually will have known him, will have seen him, will have been at the game at Wembley in '66, and can give you a real insight and overview far more than I can.
Yeah.
And it's vitally important that news outlets, media outlets, keep drilling home just what these players meant, not just as a collective, but just what they meant to the English game.
I see George Cohen occasionally, the right back in the side. He's in fantastic.
We saw him at Wembley, didn't we?
Absolutely, for the Montenegro game or whatever it was. We both also saw him at a funeral recently as well, of Ken Jones, the great journalist. And George is, apart from his knees, George is in magnificent health, and sharp as any 21-year-old. And I wonder when I see him. I don't want to push, but he should be in demand for interviews every day, because what he knows about that campaign, unique so far in the history of English football, won't be there forever, I wonder sometimes if he is besieged with interviews. Anyone who goes down to Fulham can talk to him, because he's always there. He has his own lounge, quite rightly. But yeah, absolutely. History can go. I found this out when I wrote a book about Sir Matt Busby. Now, to me, Sir Matt Busby is Manchester United, but the young fans who chant his name don't really know who he is. And that I find that lack of appreciation of history is something that concerns me too.
The problem is there's little TV coverage, of course. In the early '60s, I think Match of the Day started '64 or something like that. Yeah. So we weren't bombarded with the amount of matches we are now. So I know when they try and have a documentary on George Best, it's the same bits of film you see, isn't it? The little chip against Chelsea. They're very good, but so you can understand, youngsters, they don't really have the opportunity to know about these people. It's like your musical heroes. I'm afraid of our generation, they're going as well. It's life.
Certainly a fitting tributes paid to Martin Peters on this table this morning, and I should say across Fleet Street and all the papers this morning. Paul's just talked about the Mail on Sunday's pieces and fitting tributes across their paper this morning. Highly recommended. Martin Peters passing away yesterday at the age of 76. OK, next up we're going to talk about Liverpool, their Club World Cup winners. But what does it really mean? More on that next. Who says the Club World Cup doesn't matter? Paddy and I have just been reminiscing. Well, I wasn't actually alive. 1967. Celtic against Racing Club.
Yes.
The attendance at Hampden Park for the first leg was a two-legged final. Racing Club of Argentina. 170,000.
Really?
To see Celtic win.
I remember
1-0 in the first leg, lost the second leg 2-1.
Yeah, but I think the second leg was... I think Celtic ended up with half the players sent off. I mean, it was... or that might have been in another one. But, I mean, the games were all incredibly violent. I mean, when Manchester United played Estudiantes after winning
68,
68. The games were both really, really rough. And I think Alex Stepney clocked one of their players, and Paddy Crerand would have hit someone, I'm sure. It was just like that, they were just wars. And Matt Busby had actually taken Man United. He'd been warned by Jock Stein, don't get involved in this thing, with the South Americans, because the cultures clash, or words to that effect. And Matt thought, no. Saintly Matt thought, no, we can build bridges between the continents and so on. And of course, he changed his mind as soon as the game started, and they were really, really rough. And I can't even remember. Estudiantes won. But yesterday's game, thank God, was a showed how much more peaceful and in a way homogenised culturally football has become.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some stories in the week about Liverpool.
I mean, there were filthy foreigners in those days. There are no filthy foreigners anymore.
No.
That was the way, the attitude.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure. Lots of stories this week, though, about Liverpool's preparations for past finals and going off to driving ranges at 4 o'clock in the morning because of the time lapse. Very, very different approach here, though, for Liverpool in Doha. Once they'd committed to this tournament, Jurgen Klopp and his players decided they were going to win it.
Fully committed. You know, a lot of Liverpool fans thought, even they thought it was a bit of a waste of time, but Jurgen Klopp didn't, because Liverpool fans just want one thing this season. And
OK, just on that point, Rico, why would you think it's a waste of time?
Because there's a desperate urge to win the Premier League. That's all that matters for Liverpool fans. I don't think the Champions League comes into it now. No. They are absolutely desperate to win it. It's 30 years, as everybody knows.
Why can't you do both? You can do both.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying the urge is to win that. That's in the fans' mind. Jurgen Klopp's different. He thinks he can win everything. He thinks he's got a squad that is capable of coping with the schedule. I mean, it's a serious schedule. I mean, just look at December, all the games they're playing.
Yeah. And they lost the game, of course, yesterday. They would have played West Ham.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the good thing is for them, they have a nice cushion, points. Was it 10 points cushion? So that's fine. But yeah, I mean, you saw by the squad that was named. I mean, it was under 23s that played Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup, and I thought they did very well. Well, certainly wasn't a 5-0. Yeah. But Jurgen Klopp, from minute one, says, we want this trophy. It's all about silverware. And so he's picked his best team. OK, he's had an injury, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. That's the risk you have. That can happen in training, can't it? And they've got another trophy. And
it's about momentum as well.
And momentum.
Just keep winning big games.
You can't just flick a switch, can you?
No.
Say, well, we're going to play then and we're not going to play then.
And they are big games to be played on a huge stage in front of a massive audience. I think over here, I think in Britain, we underplay the tournament drastically. I don't think anybody else around the world would underplay it the way we would be so cynical about it. I think to go there and to win 2 games in a short space of time against top-class opposition and to come away as world champions, I think it's a fantastic...
I think also people learned a lot, partly from watching Flamengo yesterday. Brazilian football is still slightly different. It is nice to watch, and it is slightly different from our game. Slower, to their cost, but technically, arguably, still fascinating. And Monterrey, where the Mexicans were a good side as well. So I don't think I think it does matter, but there's no way, because of the Champions League, that us spoilt Europeans are ever going to take that as seriously as the South Americans. Whatever you may say,
but serious enough to go to, was it Ajax Gremio in 95?
Ajax were definitely playing. I remember Patrick Kluivert playing and scoring the only goal. Because he always scored the winners in those days, Patrick Kluivert.
It was a 0-0 draw, but anyway.
Yeah, well...
It says Kluivert got the winner.
Did Kluivert not get the winner?
Hey, don't forget the average age of this.
It was a 0-0 draw. I know it's going back a long time. It's 30 years.
He got the crucial penalty in the shootout.
It was a header.
Despite the crucial penalty. Despite the fact that Gremio won. Gremio did win this.
No, he scored an own goal in the penalty decider, I remember it. No, I did. I was definitely there in Tokyo. It was a freezing night. Yes, it was an absolutely freezing night in Tokyo. So maybe I wasn't concentrating enough. But
that's how seriously we take this competition.
He's forgotten the question.
You did well to convince your sports editor that you needed to be at Ajax Gremio.
In Tokyo.
What was the year? Can you remember the
95,
year?
after Ajax had just won the European Cup.
95. Well, maybe, I don't know. I was getting acclimatised for the World Cup in 2002. Who knows? Who knows? But no, it is huge in the broadcasting organisation which transmitted the game yesterday was at pains to point out, through using Tim Vickery, the English Brazilian-based, to get over the idea of how, we might think it's sort of like a glorified Community Shield, but in South America, the traffic stops. I mean, it is huge. And I think probably, because it was a decent game yesterday, reasonably good, although the broadcasting organisation that will remain nameless but is national did overhype it quite ridiculously. But it was still a decent game. It was competitive.
Ironically, the South Americans do take it very seriously.
Yeah.
And yet you look at the record, and I think European teams have won, 9 of the last 10. I mean, Flamengo were desperate to play Liverpool. They didn't want Liverpool to lose against Monterrey. Flamengo and their fans wanted to try and beat Liverpool.
Yeah. Are they on for a Grand Slam, Mac? So they hold the belts they hold at the moment. European Cup, European Super Cup.
Yeah.
They now have the Club World Cup. If they go on to win the Premier League, would we count this in a season, or do we have to look at Community Shield and say, sorry lads?
I don't know. I'm always wary of a manager who claims the Community Shield as a trophy, because I remember
European Super Cup.
I remember Peter Schmeichel once taking a penalty for Manchester United in the Community Shield, and that was how seriously Manchester United seemed to take it. So I'm willing to park the Community Shield, but I think Liverpool have been absolutely fantastic. I think I don't think they'll romp the title. I think it'll be closer than it is now, but I think they'll win it. At the start of the season, I couldn't see past them, because I just thought that it took something incredible by Manchester City to keep them at bay last season, and I just felt that was the peak for Manchester City, and Liverpool were getting better. And so it's been proven this season.
I think the odds, I mean, people who make odds don't often make mistakes. But the odds against Liverpool of 7-2 to win the league this season were virtually a handout.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to say that I will be collecting from them a little bit of the money that I've poured into their pockets over the years. But it just seemed like a giveaway. I mean, it really was. Liverpool, I could not see past Liverpool this year, because, and apart from anything else, you look at the team and it's so energetic, it's irresistible. But statistically, teams that come that close to winning a title always win it. Almost always win it the next season, and that's it.
I think City keeping Liverpool at bay exhausted City last season.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't think they regenerated strongly enough, and I think Liverpool did. And I think everything about Liverpool, I think the everything that Klopp brings to Liverpool, personified in that team, the charisma, the enthusiasm, the drive, the energy, the sheer enjoyment of it. And I think he is absolutely a totem for what English football is.
There's another thing about it, that only Alex Ferguson in the history of English football, in my opinion, has used the squad as well as Klopp.
Yeah.
In fact, Klopp maybe is even better at it. He can make 6 changes and the team plays exactly the same.
Yeah, because they're all good players.
Well,
they are.
Well, yes, they are. But I mean,
there's no real weaknesses.
No, there aren't, but it's only because the players are playing at to 100% of their ability. How many, you go through every club in the country and there's none where every single player in the staff is playing at 100% of his ability. I mean, if you look at Manchester United, how many of them play to 50% maximum, play to 100% of their ability? Klopp gets every single player, even if he's not playing, even if he only comes in once a month, he plays to 100% of his ability.
Also, you don't hear players moaning. I mean, Shaqiri hasn't played that many games. Now, maybe he's at another club, you'd be here, I'm unhappy, I want to go. But no, they're all happy.
Why would you want to leave Liverpool?
Well, exactly. Adam Lallana's, I know Adam's had injuries, but the same. They are excellent players. It's an excellent squad, led by an excellent manager.
Yeah. Liverpool have got it nailed with their PR at the moment, haven't they, Paul? Because it's good news after good news, isn't it? They're winning trophy after trophy. So they built that. There's an accumulation of trophies under Jurgen Klopp. There's success on the field. They're also announcing new contracts. More good news.
Well,
Jurgen Klopp till 2024. It's good news off the field.
Yeah, but
constant drip feed of information.
I think they're very smart. I think all of us know that the PR machine at Liverpool is very strong, but they get it. And you don't ever feel that there's a cynicism about it. You feel there's an authenticity about it. There's an integrity about it, but that comes from the man at the top.
Yeah.
That comes from Klopp. He won't. I don't think he would let that club become cynical, or I don't think he would let it become inauthentic. I think he feels very
sincere,
much.
During the Shankly-Paisley years, before Sir Alex Ferguson became the dominant and Manchester United became the dominant institution in English football, Liverpool not only had good players, but they were the best run club off the field in the country. They were run by 3 people, basically, and one was the manager.
If you wanted an interview in those days, Paddy, how did you go?
You asked what would now be called the CEO, a guy called Peter Robinson.
Yeah.
He ran the club day to day, and he ran it brilliantly, including us. He played us like a violin in a nice way, in an enlightened way. And Liverpool are now back there. They are the best run club in the Premier League, and by an amazing coincidence, they happen to be at the top of it. And you know, we talk a lot about managers, we talk about players and all that, and of course players are important, but the organisation of the business, of the club itself, is almost as important.
You asked how you went about an interview. You know, all you do is go down to Melwood, which is a bit run down then, with your notebook, and the players were there, and you just say, Rushy or whoever, would you do a few words?
They sometimes said no. We don't.
No, they never said no.
Reminds me in my formative years, you schooling me in that art with after a Wales game with Gary Speed, another great player that we've sadly lost, and Craig Bellamy, who happily idled away, chatting away to us after Wales International because at the Millennium Stadium one night.
Because they felt relaxed. And
with you?
Yeah, well, in those days, don't forget, we'd go out for a drink with them, you know, and have a meal with them. It was a different world, and although I'm English, covering Wales, I was Welsh. You know, you were part of them, and they accepted you. And you know, people like Gary Speed were a bit suspicious at first, but then they saw me talking to people like Mark Hughes, Ian Rush. Oh, he must be all right. Neville Southall. Now, if Neville gives you the OK, you are OK. So it was a different world there, and you didn't have press officers. I mean, press officers do a good job now, a lot of them, but you were able to roam free, do what you want. And if you upset somebody, then they wouldn't speak to you again. So that was down to you. They were great years because you worked hard. As you know, Ash trained hard.
I was writing a piece about Ian Callaghan once, the Liverpool midfield player, and I was quite an inexperienced journalist, and I said I need, you know, an opinion to go with. I need a quote to go with this piece. And the guy I was working with, John Roberts, said to me, "Well, ring Liverpool and speak to Shankly." Well, that would be like saying, just ring Man City's number and demand to be put through to Pep Guardiola.
He's changed his number.
And so I rang Liverpool's number and was put through to Bill Shankly. I mean, I became completely tongue-tied. You know, when this rasping voice came, Scottish voice came on the other end, I could hardly say my own name and introduce myself and scribble down a couple of words. I mean, I was totally starstruck. But you could. You got through.
I was the same with Brian Clough. I was suddenly put through. What do I say now? I didn't expect him to answer.
Brian Clough, though, refused an interview, but he said, "You can come down for a game of squash."
Yeah.
He says, "Do you play squash?" And I said, "No." He says, "That's a pity, because you could come down for a game of squash, but you're not getting an interview."
Wonderful. We'll get interviews from Carlo Ancelotti and Mikel Arteta. We'll try and get put straight through to them. We're going to tell you how they're going to get on in their respective new jobs at Arsenal and Everton. That's coming next here on the Sunday Supplement. Welcome back to our Christmas special. It's the Legends show here on Sunday Supplement. With us this morning, Paul McCarthy, Paddy Barclay and John Richardson. OK, let's remind you what's in the papers. Back of the Sunday Express, he gave us the world. Tributes pouring in to Martin Peters, who passed away yesterday at the age of 76. England's World Cup winner. He also played with distinction for West Ham, Tottenham, Norwich and Sheffield United. Back of the Mail on Sunday, tributes from Oliver Holt, Patrick Collins, Sir Geoff Hurst, Jeff Powell, Harry Redknapp and Sir Trevor Brooking this morning. Goodbye to England's gentlemen. A fitting tribute on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. sad day for football in the Sunday Times. One of the all-time greats, says Sir Geoff Hurst, who of course scored a hat-trick in that World Cup final. Sunday Mirror this morning, World Cup. Club World Cup winners Liverpool beating Flamengo last night in Doha, taking the mick. Mikel Arteta watched his new Arsenal team draw 0-0 at Goodison Park yesterday. Rico was there to watch that game. Arteta decided to move on. He was, of course, Pep Guardiola's number 2. He decided to move on because he wasn't given the assurances he wanted that he would get the Manchester City job when Pep Guardiola eventually leaves the club, which is why he's taken the Arsenal job. That's Simon Mullock's story. The world leader, Firmino, scoring the winner yesterday for Liverpool in that Club World Cup final victory over Flamengo. Domestically, in the Premier League, back in the groove, Man City beating Leicester 3-1 last night at the Etihad, still in with a title shout. That's the Stars' take on events at the Etihad last night. And as I said earlier, I was there for this game to watch it, or to see it. Miguel Almiron at the 27th attempt finally scores for Newcastle. It was the winner against Crystal Palace, and Steve Bruce up to 9th in the table, Rico. Not a bad manager, is he?
Sir Steve. Yeah. No, he's done a great job. I mean,
shame that punters don't want to go and see a decent team for a change.
Just
45,000.
That's got nothing to do with Steve Bruce. That's to do with the owner, as you know. Macca's been a bit naughty now, stirring it.
Stirring up.
At all. Just go and see your team. Go and watch your team. Go and watch a successful team.
Do you think Steve's doing better than the previous manager?
He is this season. When you compare the respective records, but you know, Rafa Benitez did.
The previous manager was
Rafa Benitez did a great job against all the odds, and Steve Bruce is doing a great job against all the odds again. But I mean, you know, the only way to unite that football club is for a new owner. You know, and it's up there for 300 million. It's a snip. It's a bargain.
If you happen to have 300
Christmas bargain, actually.
Yeah, Christmas bargain. Okay. Let's see what's in our stocking fillers over the next
Macca's got enough,
few days. Let's talk Goodison Park. We'd all like to be a pound behind Macca, I know that. Let's talk events at Goodison Park and 0-0 draw yesterday, which you were there.
I was.
You were there to watch the game. I guess the story really is about events off the field rather than what happened on it. Well, because we could probably restrict that to about 30 seconds max.
Yeah, well, thankfully it was off the field, because on the field was shocking. You know, there was Arteta up in the stand, and there was Carlo Ancelotti flanked by Bill and, you know, Mashuri. And I imagine...
What was the reception like for Ancelotti yesterday?
Wasn't any. Because it wasn't announced. It wasn't announced to the fans. I mean, we got the official go-ahead to announce it at about, 1 o'clock. But there was no announcement to the fans whatsoever. Because I was at the first game when Duncan Ferguson was in charge, you know, against Chelsea.
Well, he announced himself.
And the place was absolutely rocking. But there wasn't. But you speak to Everton fans, and most of them are delighted. You know, they think it's a great coup for the club, and I believe it is. But, you know, Ancelotti, let's not beat about the bush. Ancelotti's gone there for a lot of money. You know, it's rumoured that it's 11.5 million a year, 4.5-year contract. So it's nice work if you can get it. But, you know, when you look at the managers around, his CV is second to none. You know, I think it's a great coup for Everton, and I think the fans will take to that. But at the moment, they love Big Duncan, and I think some of them are a bit disappointed that... Well, he's going to be assistant, but he won't be...
Nobody's brave enough to tell him he's got to move on.
He won't be roaming...
Email.
He won't be roaming...
Duncan.
He won't be roaming down the touchline, you know, grabbing ball balls. But it's been... Hey, he's lifted the club. You know, there's the passion's back in it. So now you come to a real manager who hopefully will take it on.
I can't believe that there are people suggesting that this is a gamble, that Everton are taking a gamble, that it's more of a risk for Everton appointing Ancelotti than it is for Arsenal appointing Mikel Arteta. The track record of the man, the CV, the pedigree, what he has achieved, the players that he's worked with, the clubs that he's worked with. I agree with you, John. For Everton, where they are, in terms of where they've been for the last 10 years, shall we say, and where they are actually this season, very much at the wrong end of the table, looking over their shoulders at a relegation fight. To get Carlo Ancelotti is a massive statement of intent, and And I think it's the kind of decision that Everton fans have been waiting for since the arrival of Mashiri at Goodison Park.
I think
and he can withstand pressure points as well, because he was the manager at Real Madrid when they finally won La Decima. Which they craved.
Yes, I agree that there's no element of gamble at all in it, except from Ancelotti's point of view, of course. But the gamble will come when they buy well, for a start where are we now? Next month.
In a week's time.
In a week's time. And then they're going to have to do something there, however limited it may be, and then spend, an unprecedented amount of money in the summer to keep up with, in other words, to give him players that are of his own class. And I saw him as a player. He's a tremendous player.
But it's much easier now for Everton to attract that kind of calibre.
So that's as long as you spend the money, then it isn't a gamble.
You've just
got to come up with the stake.
Yeah.
He hasn't been brought in to finish sixth, though, has he? All this, let's qualify for the Europa League. This is serious intent. It says we've got a manager who knows how to win a Champions League. Let's get into the top four.
Well, this is Mashiri, who's already put about 300 million into the club, saying, right, I'm spending again, but I want results for this. So the pressure's on everybody to deliver. Let's remember, he did have Ronald Koeman there as well. That was a big manager, which didn't work out. But Carlo Ancelotti, as we all agree, is a top name.
But from the club's point of view, it's a gamble. Mashiri, he's funds behind him, but when you've got that old-fashioned ground, and you saw it sort of. I doubt if Ancelotti's sat in a stadium like that for a while.
He wants to try sitting in the press box.
But the other thing about it is it doesn't produce revenue, and it's.
The thing what they've got to do though under Ancelotti now is they've got to find a direction, because there's been for far too long at Everton. There's been too many behind the scenes clashes or people pulling in different directions. Remember when they were trying to sign, players. Bill Kenwright would say, oh yeah, we want this player and we're willing to give there. Then Mashiri's people would say, oh no, it's going to be this and this is the fee. And then when he was there, Steve Walsh would be saying, oh, this is the fee. And the clubs were dealing with three different people, or three different factions within Everton, trying to sign their players. And they were all quoting different prices, different terms of payment and things like that. And because they were dysfunctional. Under Ancelotti, they cannot be. There cannot be that dysfunction.
And we can, similarly as with Liverpool, we can go back to when Everton won mid-80s, won two titles in 3 years. And the European Cup Winners' Cup under Howard Kendall. Howard, and again, I don't know what Jim Greenwood was called, but he was the chief executive. He was the club secretary. Those two ran the club. They would refer things to Sir Philip Carter, the chairman, who, but basically a maximum of three people ran the club and they ran it together.
You can't do that anymore because football clubs are so much bigger and there's so much more finance involved. There's so many different commercial decisions that have to be taken. And recruitment
is a worldwide thing instead of just bashing the motorway. Of course it's changed, but you still need to have everybody reading from the same script. That's the most important. And that's where Liverpool have 12 important employees, but they all read from the same script.
Yeah, especially in terms of recruitment.
Yes, is everybody reading from the same script at Arsenal? Mikel Arteta, the very, very bold and ambitious appointment. Pep Guardiola's number 2, former Everton player, former Arsenal player, now the number 1.
This is a gamble. This definitely is a gamble because, is he going to learn from Pep? Because I know that Pep is very much hands-on at Manchester City. He does all the training. Mikel Arteta doesn't do it. He might. He's helped individuals. He's helped Raheem Sterling, for instance. He's helped individuals, but he's never, to my knowledge, put on a coaching session for the team. So, he's going into the unknown. Now, if he listens and learns from Pep, which obviously he has, then if he's Pep light, if you like, then it could succeed. But it is a gamble because he has never coached or certainly not been the head coach of a Premier League side.
37 years old, Paul.
Yeah.
to take this job. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I think they wanted to do it before Emery, or there were factions within us. And talking about factions at Everton, it's the same within Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think there was a real willingness to appoint him before, off the back of Arsene Wenger's departure. Other voices won out, and Unai Emery got the job. I think that it is a bold statement. What I know about him and what you hear about him at Manchester City is that I take on board what you say, John, about, OK, he's not a head coach. But I think what Arsenal need, as much as anything, is a direction, and they need discipline. And everything you hear about Mikel Arteta is that there is a very strong disciplinarian streak in him. And he needs to... Freddie Ljungberg set a really good example yesterday talking about Mesut Ozil. Arteta's got to pick that up, and he's got to lay down the law. That sounds ridiculous, but he has to have a discipline and a determination not to let players run Arsenal Football Club at the moment the way that I think under Emery they seem to run it.
And Manchester City is a disciplined football club.
God, yeah.
Very disciplined. In fact, if anything, the only slight criticism you ever hear a whisper about Guardiola is that he's a little bit too demanding.
Yeah.
But that's the best fault you could possibly have.
Yeah.
And that is the culture of Manchester City Football Club. And if you can bring a bit of that to Arsenal, then that's fine. But the difference is Manchester City want to be the best club in the world. Arsenal don't. The owners of Arsenal couldn't care less about that.
What was the tone yesterday of Freddie Ljungberg when he talked about the Mesut Ozil situation? OK, we know he was unavailable to play yesterday, but he said even if he was, he wouldn't have been here.
He was very honest, because a lot of managers could just said, because somebody asked about Ozil and said, well, he could have said he's injured, end of story. But he came out and said he wasn't happy with what happened. That's not what any player of Arsenal should do. And so he made a stand, and he gave us the easy headline that he wouldn't have played even if he'd been fit. And respect to him. And Maka goes on about discipline at Arsenal. That's the sort of discipline the football club needs.
Culture is the word Paddy used, and that's something that Arsenal have lacked for actually too long, even under Wenger.
Yes, well, Wenger indulged. Again, if you pick out one fault in a great man, Wenger was too soft. He was too nice. And to players who fell short. And Ozil, although a wonderful, wonderful player on song, has, in terms of work rate, has fallen short almost from the minute he joined the club.
Well, I mean, the difference was last weekend you saw that probably one of the only players in terms of talent that can match Kevin De Bruyne is Mesut Ozil.
Yeah.
And then Kevin De Bruyne ran.
Kevin De Bruyne runs.
And, he's averaging, I think, 11.5 kilometres a game, which is astonishing, really, for somebody of that creative talent. And that's what I hope Arteta will bring to Arsenal. He will bring the embracing of quality players, but actually driving into them a work ethic, because that's in the first 10 years of Arsene Wenger's career, that's exactly what he had. He had great players with an amazing work ethic about them. And that's where this Arsenal team, for the last 10, 12 years, has been utterly lackadaisical, because they think
it's
they can
almost
get...
like a job creation scheme.
Yeah, they can get through. You could be a little trinket player and do nice little bits and pieces, and that's all you need to do. And he's got to change that.
Just a final point here, Rico, is that did you hear? Was it audible, the Arsenal fans singing about Arsenal Fan TV, get out of our club? Because it's been,
I had to have it
clearly divisive.
I had to translate it to me because it was in Cockney, but because I said what they're singing.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
Now you know. So now you know what. How much of a distraction has this been to this club?
Well,
is it a distraction?
Well, according to the away fans, yes, it was huge, because it was almost to a man. the chance. So
really? Right.
Yeah, and I saw also footage that it got a bit nasty with a couple of the So I think they made the point known that to them it's not doing Arsenal's credibility any good whatsoever. We all criticise, don't we? But I think they feel it's gone too far.
Yeah, I think it's a side issue, isn't it? I mean, listen, fans.
Well, not a side issue to those away fans.
Well, fans will criticise if the team is poor. If the team was performing brilliantly, or if the team was actually living up to the standards that Arsenal fans expect, Arsenal fan TV wouldn't be any kind of a problem.
I've seen dozens of incidents much more heated than that,
Yeah.
with Arsenal fans arguing about Arsene Wenger.
Wenger
when he was
in
the
or out,
manager.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So they were flying, they were flying planes at one point. I was at West Brom a few years ago when there was a plane. Okay. We're going to move on to another London team. We talked about Arsenal. We're going to talk about two others now, Spurs and Chelsea. They face each other this afternoon. Jose Mourinho up against his former club. It's a big game this afternoon, of course, between Tottenham and Chelsea. I was just looking at the league table, actually, lads, and Sheffield United are sandwiched in between Chelsea and Tottenham, because I just want to have a quick word on Sheffield United and their season. Great start here.
Yeah.
They won, of course, again yesterday. Ollie McBurney scoring the winner at Brighton. Sheffield United now chalked up 3 top-flight wins on the bounce. Their best run since 4 in a row under Harry Bassett. Between May and August 1993. And I suspect that August 1993 might have been that season when do you remember when they famously dressed up in Father Christmas outfits on the pitch? Because their season always started after Christmas. So they said, OK, let's dress up in Father Christmas outfits in August.
It's all coming back.
And, but it's an amazing achievement for Chris Wilder.
We should have done that today, shouldn't we?
I thought you had. I thought you were in fancy dress. Come as a bin man.
I mean, when you know, say Sarri plays a distinct style of football in Napoli, it's described as Sarri ball. Chris Wilder plays really, really interesting football, in my opinion.
I agree.
I mean, it's, you know, putting 16 players on the field at one time, which is what they seem to do, is, you know, it's very, very. I'm fascinated into how it happens. They play very, very good football. They appear to have, you know, be able to outnumber you in any way, and people talk about them being resilient, but I mean, that's just a given as far as Wilder's concerned.
Just to give you an insight into how they are doing it, because there's some comparisons here, and this is, I'd say, probably very similar statistics to Brighton's draw with Palace at Selhurst Park in the week. But this time Brighton lost 641 passes against 292. Completed passes 528 against 188. Touches in the box for Brighton 27, Sheffield United 13. Tackles 7 from Brighton, 22 by Sheffield United. The distance covered is pretty much the same, 71 miles for both teams. Possession 63% for Brighton. And
I've seen a bit of Sheffield United. Don't run away with the fact that they're resilient, etc., etc. They're good to watch. They've got some very good players, and they play as a
team. Those stats would actually, if you didn't watch the game, if you haven't watched Sheffield United play this season, you would look at that and think they've nicked a result.
No. Well, that's not the game.
This wasn't one of their prettier performances. That is true.
No, Chris Wilder admitted that.
I think if you'd seen, sorry, Maggie, you were saying.
No, the game against Manchester United, when really they should have held on, and in the end they, you know, again McBurney gets the equaliser. They have a style. There is no asterisk next to their name which says, oh, they play this. They play the way that is effective. It's not a throwback football by any stretch of the imagination. It's an intelligent way of utilising the players that Chris Wilder has at his disposal. And I think that if you let them play, they can play good football. If they have to fight and scrap, they can fight and scrap. I think he's done a brilliant job, Chris Wilder. I think he would only have ever got into the Premier League with Sheffield United.
Well, he's not linked with the Arsenal or Everton job, was he?
No, and I think it's probably a bit too early, a little bit too early for that. Because he hasn't got a track record.
He's done more than
Mikel
Arteta as a manager.
Yeah, but Mikel Arteta comes with a kudos. He's played for Arsenal. He's been with Pep.
Well,
you know,
but it's football snobbery, isn't it? Basically, so let him get on with it.
It's an amazing achievement. Look, 16 goals they've conceded in 18 Premier League games for a promoted team. 3 of those, I think, were in the same Well, I was there. It was the Manchester United game, wasn't it, at Bramwell Lane? OK, let's move on to the subject that we were originally going to talk about at the start of this part, which is Tottenham against Chelsea. All of a sudden, Paddy, Tottenham and Spurs under Mourinho, or
Tottenham and Spurs.
Tottenham and Spurs.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
two teams. So good they
He
named
might be
them
able to do
twice.
that, you know.
Yep.
That they've got the scent here, the sniff. They're within 3 points of Chelsea. They will go level. They will draw level with them this afternoon if they beat them. Will Mourinho get caught up in the history with his former club this afternoon?
No, I don't think so. I think because, you know, for the reasons you announce, it's Mourinho has been brought to Spurs. I mean, you know, Levy had eyes on him, tried before for him, at least once, twice, I think. Maybe, anyway, you would know. But
certainly once after his first spell at
after
Chelsea
his first
ended,
spell, yes. And you know, he's got his man, and he knows what he wants. He wants top four. He wants Champions League. And you know, it's a very, very important match. The momentum is not so much with Spurs as against Chelsea. The doubts have crept in about this fantastically exciting young side. And I can only see it going one way today.
And that way is a Tottenham win.
A Tottenham win. I mean, apart from anything else, I mean, they've got a better team. They've got this fantastic attack. I mean, Harry Kane just gets better and better and better. You talk about number 9s and number 10s. I can't remember which game it was recently, the one where Son scored that fantastic goal. Kane played 9 and 10 in the same game. He played brilliantly in both positions in the same game. He's a fantastic passer. And he just gets better and better and better. He is world class.
Yeah, Burnley at home that game, wasn't it?
But that's right. Yeah, it was a magnificent performance.
I think people are billing this, obviously Mourinho's history with Chelsea, but people are billing it between, you know, master and pupil. I think if there are two more dispassionate people in the game at the moment at managerial level, it is Jose Mourinho and Frank Lampard. I think that they are obviously have a huge amount of respect for each other. I remember when we paid tribute to Jose Mourinho at the Savoy, and Frank gave the most moving speech about how supportive Jose had been when Frank's mother passed, and the compassion that he showed. But if anybody knows anything about Frank Lampard, is that he can box off that kind of emotion, because he like Mourinho, exactly, is single-minded, almost cold in his determination, and I don't think he'll get caught up. Neither of them will get caught up in any
on
of the
that point. He
emotions
scored, if memory serves correct, he scored a penalty against Liverpool in the Champions League semi-final at Stamford Bridge, didn't he? When Benitez was. Was it semi-final?
Yeah. Well.
He scored. That was the week that his mother. But the point I'm making,
that's right.
That was the week that his mother passed away, and Lampard stepped up and said, "I'm taking this penalty, and I'm going to score it," and he did.
Yeah.
And he talked about the mix zone afterwards, didn't he? He was fantastic. You know,
but I mean, when Frank came back to Chelsea, I'm told that, you know, he actually said, "Listen, there are times when I could be incredible as a player. I had to be so focused and so concentrating on what I did every single day." He said that I could be quite dislikable. He said because I was very, very self-contained. When he came back as a manager, it was very much different. He was very much about the team, about everybody, not just the players, but about the people behind the scenes, about the whole staff. And what has impressed a lot of people is the way that as a manager, he has changed from the way he was as a player, but there is still that dispassionate view.
I don't know if it's the way I'm reading this this sentence in Jonathan Wilson's column in the Observer this morning. He says, "From apparently clear skies, a crisis is approaching. The next 2 months feel critical for Lampard's managerial future. They've lost 4 of their last 5 in the Premier League."
I think if anybody's got not a free ride, because nobody gets a free ride in the Premier League, but if anybody's got goodwill and has got trust in them, built up in a short space of time, I think it's Frank Lampard.
Yeah, I think to the extent, if what Jonathan's saying is that turbulent waters lie ahead, you bet. I mean, you know, the one window isn't going to sort out the defensive problems at Chelsea. And Chelsea aren't. I mean, they're going to play. They play pretty football, but it is a difficult period that's coming up, and I think it will start this afternoon. I mean,
but do we think his managerial career is under threat or on the line?
No, I mean, his job at Chelsea might be.
Not yet.
If they finish, well, not yet. No,
absolutely no chance.
But you know how it did. Look, come on, we've all done it. We write it so that we're writing it first. But no, I think it's an exaggeration.
It's just a brave.
Yeah.
It just struck me this morning when I was reading.
I read the same. I read the same piece, and I thought
it's a brave thing.
You know what it's like when you write a paragraph like that, and you think, "Am I going a wee bit too far?" No, I'll chuck it in, and then I'll look clever if it comes true.
Yeah, but what it doesn't take into consideration is the fact that they lost the best player in the Premier League in the summer and weren't able to replace him or anybody. They weren't able to strengthen. They'd already brought Pulisic in, and they weren't. Now you get a chance to strengthen. You get a chance to strengthen again in the summer.
To put it in context, a month ago, would have been saying Chelsea are playing the best football they've played since early Vialli. I mean, it's magnificent football. And it's class of 92. It's people who've got all this 10 years of hard work in Chelsea in producing young players has produced this. I mean, it's fantastic.
But it's an interesting...
You can't do it without defenders.
But ironically, the pressure will crank up through the transfer windows. Because, as Macca says, he's had a bit of a free run, but now, of course, he's able to buy next month and in the summer.
And, of course, he'll be judged if Chelsea do spend the big bucks for example, Jadon Sancho.
120 million, huh?
Not for you?
Not for you, Joe?
Not 120 million, no.
No, not yet.
Because I don't think he's good enough for 120
million. He's a
million.
fantastic talent, but he's not a... You know, he's not a leader, you know. And
I know fees are ridiculous, but no, not yet. Not for me.
I think that's too much.
In terms of if you were, having to speculate on who in the next 5 years is going to emerge as the best young talent, or it won't even be that young, as the best player in Europe.
Really?
I would say Jadon Sancho is right up there.
Got the ability.
And is absolutely worth a hit of that kind of money.
I'd take a 45 million punt on Jack Grealish. I think
but he's not the player that they need. They need a replacement for Hazard, which they haven't got. They haven't got.
Pulisic is supposed.
But he's not, though, is he?
He's supposed.
I mean, he's. I think he's a nice player and he's a tidy player, and but he's not direct. He doesn't give you. I don't think he gives you the goal threat that Hazard would. I think Sancho in that team, in 2 years' time, you'll be talking about a breathtaking player.
9 goals, 9 assists in 15 Bundesliga appearances for Sancho.
Yeah, fine.
Your man Grealish on the score sheet yesterday.
Bundesliga, you know, it's not the Premier League, is it?
In fairness, there's enough clubs.
It's a step up.
It's definitely not the Premier League.
It is a step up. It's a division below the Premier League.
We just mentioned Pulisic, and you say he struggled.
I didn't say he struggled. I said he's a nice player.
Oh, sorry.
He's a nice player, but
Chelsea don't want nice players. They want winners.
Yeah. Precisely, and I think
it doesn't matter where he's playing if he's as good as Macca says. It's just that I'm just not sure if he's mature enough as a player to be worth that kind of money. Talent-wise, absolutely no question.
Okay, we're going to be talking about not just talent, but pedigree. The players who can last the course and distance. Who's been the best player in the Premier League over the last 10 years? Player of the decade, we love a bit of nostalgia, but who's been the best player, what should we say, Premier League over the past 10 years? Who's been the joy to watch? Who's our personal favourite?
One winner, four Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups and a runners-up, 4 League Cups, 2 Community Shields. I know they only count for half, like goals in Scotland, but Vincent Kompany, by a country mile.
He's nicked out.
Not mine. Not mine. No, not mine.
Vincent Kompany, who by coincidence is also the recipient of the Football Writers Association.
Sunday, January the 12th.
Sunday, tickets available.
No tickets available. Sold out, man. Absolutely sold out.
That tells you everything.
He's not even got tickets to sell.
I can't even knock out No spares.
He's
No,
actually.
I just think he is.
You've done
He's
absolutely-
actually it's very resolute. I mean, reading the stats
Left field.
off a piece of paper underneath the desk is
Yes.
It's research, Paddy.
It's research. Called research. I wouldn't know about that. No, but the club is right, and probably the list of honours. Do you want my opinion? Or
That's also Mackel's done.
Yeah.
Well, you're here.
Or
No,
You're
Vincent
normally
Kompany, I
not
mean,
shy to give it.
listen,
I would the same amount of honours, but add to that the World Cup, the European Championship, and you've got David Silva. And he's my player of my English player, if you like, or my player of the Premier League of the last decade. The player of the last decade has been Lionel Messi, of course.
Yeah.
But in our world, for me, David Silva, Vincent Kompany, definitely a candidate, without question. And also Aguero as well. Those three were the three in my sort of envelope.
Yeah,
but the one I
would
pulled
say-
out is David Silva, because he's just been fundamental to all of it. He came to Manchester City at the start of the decade. He's leaving at the end of it. Player of the decade, salute him, because every game he's brought beauty to the game.
But I would say that Vincent Kompany changed the culture of Manchester City.
That's true.
I think he absolutely set a standard. And actually, I think they are missing him as much
They are.
off the field this season as they are on it, because you just looked at the way that that Manchester
You
City...
could compare it with Vieira's effect on Arsenal, couldn't
Yeah,
you?
I think you're probably right, and I think he was a leader. He was a bit of a disciplinarian. Very much commanded the respect of the dressing room, and I think
Under a lot of different managers. That's what I would say is key here. It wasn't always under the same guy. It was under a lot of different guys.
And also at a time of quite a lot of turbulence at Manchester City, when they didn't really know what they were going to be, under Mark Hughes, and then Pellegrini, Mancini, now Guardiola.
Yeah, that's true.
Every single one of those managers would have picked him, and he would have been first on the team sheet under every single Manchester City manager, even more so, I suspect, than David Silva.
It's not meant to be disparaging of Vincent. You could not disparage Vincent Kompany. I mean, he's just, if you were a manager, a fit Vincent Kompany would be your dream. You'd think it doesn't matter who the other 10 are, they'll be inspired by Vincent Kompany. So I'm not, and he had a knack of scoring goals at vital times, including one of the best long-range shots I've ever seen. But for me, David Silva, the wonderful thing about when Pep Guardiola came to England, and I bear in mind that all of this started with Mancini and all that, but when Pep Guardiola came, I thought, we're going to have Barcelona in our country. We're going to have the most beautiful football in the world in our country. And the epitome of that, the person without whom that would not have happened, Manchester City might still have won the trophies, but they wouldn't have looked so beautiful doing it without David Silva. He set the tone. He brought the tiki-taka, or whatever you would like to call it, to English football. And for me, that, I just say thank you very much, because that's the kind of football.
Which Newcastle player are you going for, Rico?
All of them. Now, as you know, Macca has nicked my idea on Vincent Kompany, but yeah.
Because it was such a unique one.
Well, you said you go left field. 100% now. I mean, one of the biggest surprises when first interviewed him, there under his arm after he'd been to his local newsagents, was a copy of the Times. So, yeah, not bad. So
cerebral type.
Yeah.
You better read than you were.
Absolutely. I was reading the Beano at the time. No, fantastic player, and as Macca says, missed at the moment. You know, especially off the field, I think. And you know, he offers leadership on and off the field.
Do you say it's between those three? I mean, were your candidates?
Sergio Aguero would have to come into it.
I want to give a little mention. He's not my player of the decade, and people might have a laugh at this, but Jordan Henderson has done a fantastic job at Liverpool. I mean, this is the man that had to replace Steven Gerrard, and didn't he know it? You know, didn't the fans let him know it as well?
He's done the impossible.
I mean, he was very close to leaving for Fulham, wasn't he?
Yeah.
A few years back, but he
missed opportunity.
Anyway, he stuck to his guns. He's a fantastic lad, an underrated player. as England and Liverpool would profess.
Look at the part he played in the World Cup, Club Cup win.
Yeah. Great
centre half on against Monterrey.
Great passer of the ball as well.
Yeah.
So he is part of the reason Liverpool's so successful.
Yeah,
but it's hardly
team,
a decade's achievement, though, is it?
No, I'm just putting it forward.
I don't think you can see past a Manchester City player.
If we're talking decades, they've dominated. If any club has, they've dominated the decade.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the future. We love to dwell on the past, and we get all dewy-eyed and nostalgic.
Yeah.
But what would we like to see in 2020 in the sport?
It would all be to do with laws. I'd like to see a new law preventing. I heard yesterday I can't remember who it was, the expert who said that's brilliant defending. You're watching a bit of football. He said that's brilliant defending, the use of his body and the way he used his arms. And my brother was sitting next to me watching the game, and we both sort of spat out our tea at the same time and said,
at least it wasn't your dummy.
This man is describing football, and he's saying that the skill is the use of your body, illicit use of your body and your arms. That, I would love to see referees, they're adding it to the game. It has replaced the tackle from behind as the way of stopping people. So the cynicism. I would like to see, particularly the use of the arms, but basically taking one for the team. I would like to see a law framed, and I mean, it would take too long to explain how it would be done, but a law to stop taking one for the team, to make that impossible. It could be done.
And you get a booking for it. If you get 2 bookings, you get sent off.
Yes, I know, but you foul in rotation. You see it in every game. They foul in rotation. Do
you not think? Listen, I'll take your point, Paddy. But do you not think that what you want for 2020 has nothing to do with rules? It's nothing to do with regulations or laws. It's for England, and not potentially for you, Paddy. I accept. But for England to fulfil the expectation that I think we've been building since Gareth Southgate took over in the European Championships next summer. I think it is the most mouth-watering tournament that I can remember for a long time. Much of it's going to be played on home soil. It's going to be played across, I think, 12 different countries. I think it will be absolutely fantastic, and I honestly feel.
But you're talking about football from the chauvinistic point of view. I'm talking about it from the general point of view, as a lover of football, not as a flag waver.
Can I talk about it from the fans' point of view? I'd like to see better deal for football fans. I think they're taken for granted. Kick-off times, etc., prices of tickets. I mean, they could be allowed in free. Football. I'm not saying they will be allowed in free, but football clubs could afford that. They're creaming in the money. The fans having to pay through the nose all the time, replica kits, etc., etc. I think they have a hard time.
Do you know what, Rico? It's not. I actually think it's not just the ticket prices. Do you know the train yesterday up to Newcastle? 140 odd quid. Standard class ticket to travel to Newcastle.
Just when you get an old person's reduction, you'll be all right.
Not that far off it. Imagine if you have a family. Well, not imagine, but some people have families. They've got to get people to and from St James's Park, wherever they're travelling.
That's a really good point, that, Rico.
It's well worth every penny, though, wasn't it?
It certainly was. Well, for Newcastle. Guys, we're out of time. I'm really sorry.
Come again.
It's been great to see you. Great to have your company this morning. Paul, Paddy and Rico. Thanks, guys. OK, lots of football coming your way. First up this afternoon from Vicarage Road, it's Watford against Manchester United. I'll be there in the next couple of hours. That's from 1 o'clock. Tottenham against Chelsea. That's from 4 o'clock. Download the Sky Sports app. You can watch in-game goals and highlights on your mobile phone. Don't forget to download the podcast from all the usual places. See you next week at 10 o'clock. Happy Christmas.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.